Tucker, no one reached out to me and said, as a senior citizen, are you willing to take a chance on your survival in exchange for keeping the America that all America loves for your children and grandchildren? And if that's the exchange, I'm all in. And that doesn't make me noble or brave or anything like that. I just think there are lots of grandparents out there in this country, like me, I have 6 grandchildren, that what we all care about and what we love more than anything are those children. And I want to, live smart and see through this, but I don't want the whole country to be sacrificed. And that's what I see. I've talked to hundreds of people, Tucker, and just in the last week, and making calls all the time. And everyone says pretty much the same thing, that we can't lose our whole country. We're having an economic collapse. I'm also a small businessman. I understand it. And I talk with business people all the time, Tucker. And my heart is lifted tonight by what I heard the president say, because we can do more than, one thing at a time. We can do 2 things. So, my message is that let's get back to work. Let's get back to living. Let's be smart about it. And those of us who are 70 plus, we'll take care of ourselves, but don't sacrifice the country. Don't do that. Don't ruin this great American dream.
You're basically saying that this disease could take your life, but that's not the scariest thing to you. There's something that would be worse than dying.
Yeah.
Tell you what, Republicans sure have come a long way from Obamacare will kill our nation's cherished seniors and we mustn't let that happen to, okay, look, we need the old people to die because the stock market is too low and we have an election coming up. In case you were wondering the lengths that Republicans would go to in their desperation to salvage the economy before the general election, it's apparently telling the nation's elderly population that they've got to be willing to succumb to a deadly virus because it's been 2 weeks and apparently the thought of going another day without walking into the Gap is just too much to bear. I mean, seriously, this is a party that only a decade ago tried desperately to scare Americans into not accepting the Affordable Care Act by claiming that our healthcare system would devolve into death panels. Their excuse to not get health coverage was that we cannot, under any circumstances, put the lives of Americans at risk. And now, you have Republicans showing up on Fox News suggesting that anyone over 70 has to fall on the sword because November's right around the corner and Trump needs his stock market back. Patrick even goes so far as to say that this didn't make him noble or brave, and credit where it's due, he's right. It definitely didn't make him noble or brave, it makes him a sociopath. Now, Patrick's comments came with the apparent go-ahead order by Trump, who spent his latest press conference indicating that he's had enough of these safety measures and is basically ready to open the country back up for business.
Let's go to work. Our country wasn't built to be shut down. This is not a country that was built for this. It was not built to be shut down. We have a very active flu season, more active than most. It's looking like it's heading to 50,000 or more deaths, not cases, 50,000 deaths, which is, that's a lot. And you look at automobile accidents, which are far greater than any numbers we're talking about. That doesn't mean we're going to tell everybody no more driving of cars. So we have to do things to get our country open.
Now, a few things to keep in mind here. One, because of the existing mismanagement of the coronavirus by this administration, the United States now has the steepest curve in the world. At a time when our survival and the survival of our healthcare system literally depends on flattening the curve, we've now surpassed even China and Italy with the most cases in the shortest amount of time. And that's without the tens of thousands of tests that other countries like South Korea are administering, which means that our curve is leagues steeper than we even think. To claim that the response to the outbreak has failed in this country is the understatement of the century. But two, consider this. If we just go ahead and opened everything up and let the virus spread, people would still get sick. And so either you'd have companies operating at a fraction of their capacity anyway because half the office is on ventilators, or they'd be at work spreading the virus to everyone else. Our healthcare system and hospitals wouldn't have the capacity to serve all the people suddenly infected. This wouldn't be business as usual. You would have mass deaths, a virus that's free to spread across the population, and an economy that's awful anyway. This isn't some brilliant economic stimulus plan, it's a death sentence to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans, to our healthcare system as we know it, and to our economy. But for Republicans, this isn't about reason, it's not about science, and it certainly isn't about humanity. It is strictly about getting the stock market back up and the economy running because there's an election in November. That's what this has always been about. For weeks, Trump and other Republicans and conservative media all downplayed the severity of the pandemic. Trump invoked the word hoax and suggested that it was all akin to impeachment or the Russia investigation. GOP politicians tweeted photos of themselves out in public and bragged about how packed the restaurants were, and Fox News' opinion hosts accused the liberals of concocting yet another plot to sink Donald Trump. Why? Because they didn't want to spook the markets with November fast approaching. I mean, Trump literally opted to leave Americans stranded on a cruise ship out at sea over allowing the number of cases to go up and reflect poorly on him in an election year. And so it should come as no surprise that in their continued desperation, and I mean desperation, to prop up the economy before November, they're literally willing to dispose of America's 70 and up population if it means we recoup our losses on the Dow. And I know I'm being flippant here, but the truth is that that man, Dan Patrick, is in a position of power. And so is Donald Trump. And so are dozens or hundreds of other Republicans who would give the go-ahead and get you back on the streets the second they get the okay. And that should honestly scare the crap out of you. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, we should not reward people in this country whose idea of governing is killing off our grandparents because they can't manage to lose a few bucks while we fend off a pandemic that was exacerbated by that same party's own mismanagement. Dan Patrick and the rest of the GOP don't belong on television, and they certainly don't belong in any position of power. And if you care about the lives of your loved ones, you'd agree. So when I say go out and vote like your lives depend on it this November, that is in no way an exaggeration.